Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Gileadinnkuan. This episode will be about trauma, and we have new Kimberly with us. Can you explain what a trauma is and how can it impact a person's life?
A trauma is anything that is external that happens to you. A trauma can be like how in Joplin a few years back, a tornado came in and totally devastated the whole town. So it can be something like that. It can be, a natural disaster like the tornado. It can also be some kind of like abuse that happens. I'm not saying everybody that has abuse has trauma, but if it really deeply hits you, does that make sense? So it's not like, oh my gosh, Starbucks ran out of caramel latte, I'm traumatized. It's nothing like that. Like, yes, you can be deeply saddened by that, go to another coffee place or whatever, but it's not anything like that. A lot of people are using that nowadays where they're like, I have trauma because, so-and-so doesn't like me. Oh, okay, that's not trauma. Trauma is something that hits you deeply to the point that it affects your mental, it affects your physical, it affects everything. Right. And then what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Oh, the other question is how it can impact a person's life.
Okay, well, it can impact, can I use the board?
Yeah.
It can impact, we could talk physical, okay? So physical with trauma, okay, we're talking about trauma, right? Physical, you can have physical symptoms as in stomach pain. So your stomach hurts, like you got tummy pain, okay? Then it can also hit like headaches, okay? People start having migraines, start having headaches. You can also have to the point that you have back pain. A lot of people say trauma comes from either the upper back or the lower back, so it's pain throughout the body, okay? So body pains. And then when it comes to mental, right? We talk about nightmares, okay? Nightmares, like a lot of time back in the day, they would call it not PTSD, but they called it shell shock because it was the war heroes that came back. Well, us human beings are not meant to shoot somebody, no matter if they're the enemy or not, right? We're not supposed to do that. So with people doing that, they realize, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with these nightmares that literally, like, it stops them from sleeping. They start having insomnia. There's also, when it comes to mental, it could also be racing thoughts. Like you can't concentrate. You're constantly, it's just on, like total on. So you have all of those. It also comes into like just a deep saddening. Sometimes you'll feel sad. Sometimes you just don't want to do anything. So there's like lack of motivation to do stuff. So you're just like, I just don't want to go to work, even though you like work and you really enjoyed work, but you just don't really want to go anymore. Those kind of things. So those are just examples, but there's a plethora more of symptoms that can happen.
Okay. All right. So my next question is over generational and family trauma. From a psychological perspective, what is generational or family trauma, and how does it get passed down to generations?
Okay, well, when it comes to trauma, it can happen like within many generations. So let's say your grandparents, right?
Yes.
Grandparents. They get together and have your parents, right? Well, what happens is if a trauma happens with your grandparents' generation, right? It's sort of like a lake, okay? You have a lake and the trauma gets in your lake, right? Well, usually the grandparents don't have the resources or even the knowledge of, hey, this is not right. This is a trauma. Like this is not good. It could be, they were abused, they were physically neglected, all these different things, right? And then they have your parents. So it's sort of like a waterfall effect. and it goes into your parents' lake, right?
Yeah.
And it's still there. Because trauma, if it's not dealt with, it's just going to keep going. That's all there is to it. So even though the trauma happened way back here, it literally, there's been studies that shown that with trauma, it literally changes your DNA. And it will literally pass on to your next, until you like deal with it. So with that being said, this is lack of resources. So that's why, let's say resources, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that's the reason why it keeps going, right? Well, your parents, they get it. They're like, this is normal, right? This is, like, it's okay if, my parents beat the crap out of me, stuff like that. Or, hey, it's okay if, it's a part of our culture that our parents beat us.
Like they take it as a normal thing.
And it's not normal. There's a difference between discipline and there's a difference between abuse. Like there's discipline in certain ways. I could teach you later about that if you want, put it in the comments. But with abuse, it's way different, okay? So then they think it's normal, right? So they don't get rid of it because it's there, right? But then it gets passed on to you. And then you realizing what's going on because you see podcasts, you see different things, you know what's going on, you see different cultures, and you're like, hold on a second, this is not normal. Like, there's literally families that don't beat the crap out of their kids. Like, this isn't normal. So then what happens, because this is you, right? You now have to deal with it. You now have to deal with it. So you now have resources, right? You have resources like counseling. You have resources like other places. You have case management stuff. You have all these different resources now to kind of deal with it, and kind of know how to deal with it. So when you come to us, we can help build a boat, right? My boat is kind of crappy. Sorry. I don't know. Rudder on the side. I don't know. I don't own a boat, so I don't know. So you get a boat, and then now you can deal with the trauma. So then it doesn't go onto your kids, and then they got to deal with it. That's the whole thing. It's like you, as a parent, you don't want your kids to deal with that trauma. So if you notice something's wrong or something's off or something doesn't feel right, I mean, let's just say your parents really didn't beat you like the normal culture, right? But you still feel a little like something's off, something's wrong. You know what I mean? You could come to counseling, deal with it, because even though it's not necessarily happening to you, it happened to your former generation. So to deal with it and get it out of there, so then you don't pass it on, that's what it's supposed to be all about. So that's a way of helping.
Insightful. Well, so how can someone recognize that they are carrying generational trauma, and what are some healthy ways to begin breaking those patterns?
Yes. Well, whenever we come in contact with anyone and they come over and they're like, oh, I want counseling, I want some help, or which have you, we first look at, we don't assume it's trauma right away. We first look at, okay, well, what is working for you and what is not working for you, right? So let's say, for example, in my family unit, in my family culture, when somebody passes away, we don't do nothing. No funeral, no burial, no nothing. We basically cremate the person, and that's it. There's no service, right? I don't like that. That's not okay with me, right? So I'm glad that I married TK, because in his culture, everybody comes over. Sometimes they stay for a few weeks. They come over, they're around all the time, they're helping you, they're grieving with you, they're being emotional, they tell stories, they have the light comb, they sing, they do all these different things. I love that. So for me, I'm glad I married into that, because we're adopting that into our family. I'm getting rid of what doesn't work for me. Does that make sense? So it's like little things. So when you see something is off, it could be related to trauma. It could be just related to just cultural stuff. It could be related to just normal societal stuff. Like, I'm not okay with, everybody's talking about, oh, people that get divorced left and right, blah, blah, blah. I'm not okay with that. Like, no, we're not going to grow out of love. Like, no, we're going to work at it so then we love each other more tomorrow than we did today, right? You have to work at these things. So you have to take the steps to do it. So if you are noticing something's off, come and we'll try to figure it out together. Yeah. Like what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And then, of course, okay, if this doesn't work, how can we tweak it? Because it doesn't have to be totally changed. It doesn't have to be black or white. It could be gray, it could be pink, it could be purple, it could be any color. It's just whatever works for you.
That's good. So can you tell me what are some unhealthy ways that some people might be dealing with trauma?
A lot of people, especially with our people, especially with many different cultures actually, they go to alcohol and drugs. So they get the marijuana card, they go and they drink because literally at the age of 21 you could go on like every corner has some kind of liquor, right? Yeah. So they go and they drink and they do those kind of things. And I know people are going to be like, well, I only drink, every so often, or I only do it, this many times, or hey, I smoke weed because of this, and that. Okay, well, how's it working for you? That's the major question. How does it work for you? If it's not helping you, it's hindering you, right? Yeah. If it's not helping you, it's hindering you. And if you're drunk half the time and then you wake up the next day and let's say your problems are still there, then it's obviously not working. It's numbing it for a little bit, but your problems are still there and the stuff is still there and the trauma is still there.
And going back to what you said, some people use alcohol or smoking, but then addiction is also a different thing, right?
Yes, because that opens up the door for addiction. It doesn't mean everybody that smokes or drinks alcohol doesn't mean that they necessarily get addicted. So it's not necessarily, but it's more likely that you're going to become addicted. It's sort of like if you start eating, McDonald's every 3 days, it's more likely you're going to become obese. I mean, it's just plain knowledge, right? It's common knowledge.
Yep. For that addiction.
Exactly. And there's a plethora of addictions. There could be addictions to, things you see, like pornography, or, addictions to, substances. There could be addiction to food even. There's a whole bunch of things of addiction, and it hits the different parts of the brain.
I think that's all for today's episode over trauma. Well, thank you guys for watching.
All right, take it easy.
Bye. We'll see you guys.